Hey everyone, welcome to episode 225 of the All Dolphins podcast on this 2024 President's Day, February 19th. Like I said, episode 225.
I always wonder, what is President's Day? I never get it.
I don't know. I guess it honors all the former presidents.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't think of any other reason. This is where my history lesson fails, but I will give you a Dolphins history lesson that's going to be better than that because I actually know what I'm talking about when it comes to Dolphins history. Since we're out of years to look back on at 20, because we don't know what's going to happen in 2025, we thought we would go ahead and look at Dolphin players drafted with the number corresponding to the episode numbers. In this case would be 25, episode 225. And it turns out the Dolphins have made 5 selections with the 25th overall pick in the draft. And I'm going to have to cheat and look at my sheet real quick because I don't remember everyone off the top of my head. The last one was Vontae Davis, cornerback from Illinois. There was safety Louis Oliver, safety from University of Florida. And this is where I'm going to have to go. Oh, tackle Billy Milner from the University of Houston in 1995. And then as I put on my glasses and look.
O.J. McDuffie.
There you go. Wide receiver out of Penn State in 1993. And then lastly was defensive tackle Mike Kadish from Notre Dame in 1972, the year after the Dolphins went to the Super Bowl. Mike Kadish actually never played it down for the Dolphins. So they were able to go perfect in 1972 without any contribution from their first-round pick. How about that?
Why did he never play down for the Dolphins?
You're going to have me look at my history. He wound up, I believe it was on the taxi squad as a rookie, and then I guess they moved on from him. That
first-round pick?
That first-round pick, his 25th overall pick. Yep. And out of the other four, no, not all of them had their moment. O.J. McDuffie was a very, very good wide receiver for the Dolphins. In fact, he had the team record for receptions until that was broken, and he led the NFL in catches in 1998. His team record for catches in a season was broken by Jarvis Landry, since broken by Tyreek Hill.
Yes.
Louis Oliver was the second.
O.J. McDuffie's got the biggest hands I've ever seen.
They can't be bigger than Orlando Gadsden's, can they? That's
a very good point.
Oh, Orlando Gadsden, wide receiver. For those of you old enough to remember, I mean, baseball mitts is what his hands were like. That's why you could see him. Nobody in Dolphin history made more catches stretching out with one hand and just snagging the ball, a la Odell Beckham Jr., that catch that he made famous. Gadsden would do that on a regular basis. And the other guys, Billy Milner was Don Shula's last first-round pick. Did not pan out. And it's interesting because we had Keith Sims as a guest on the show last week, and it was one of the few times in Dolphin history where they went offensive linemen in the first and second round, and that one worked out fabulously. They did it again in 95, what Dolphins did with Billy Milner and Andrew Green, a guard from Indiana in 95, and that did not work out at all. So that was our quick history lesson. Hope you like that. Again, put in the comments if you like that. If you have another idea for a history lesson, whether you want us to scrap it entirely, those of you who don't like it have not been shy about telling us, by all means, let us know. We will we aim to please as always.
Customer is always right.
The customer is always right. Moving it back to the present, there's a bit of news on this Monday, which involves the coaching staff and the report from Adam Schefter, basically kind of it being right, of the addition of a new assistant special teams coach. In this case, the exact title is going to be senior special teams assistant. It's Ronnie Bradford, who, speaking of Dolphin draft picks, actually was drafted by the Dolphins as a cornerback from Colorado in 1993. Interestingly enough, played 10 years in the NFL, made 98 starts. Not one of those games with the Dolphins. He didn't make the roster out of camp. He was waived in August of that year, hooked on with the Denver Broncos, played with Atlanta, Arizona, Minnesota, went on to coach 7 years in the NFL, including 2005. He was a special teams coach with the Denver Broncos when they had a coaching intern by the name of Omar.
Nope, don't get it. No.
2005 coaching intern for the Denver Broncos, Mike McDaniel.
Okay. Oh, so he's still got more ties to Mike McDaniel. That's what I found very interesting about his coaching staff. It's a lot of guys who have ties to him, which is, hey, I ride with it.
Yeah, it's logical. It's not very unusual. And a lot of the new assistants on defense as well have ties to Anthony Weaver. And he becomes the sixth new position coach along with Anthony Weaver, Brian Duker, Ryan Crow, Joe Barry, and I'm going to forget the other one. Deshaun Sheed. And by my calculations, other than defensive or offensive assistants or QC coaches, the only opening I see left on the coaching staff is for an assistant defensive line coach, because a gentleman who handled that position last year, Kenny Baker, went on to join the University of Texas.
Yes. A lot of change on the coaching staff. I don't necessarily know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. We will ultimately figure it out.
Yeah, and it's not unusual when you bring in a new coordinator that he's going to bring in, his people. Interesting news over the weekend, not news per se, but interesting developments, however you want to phrase it. Joel Klatt, who was the Fox Sports college football analyst, put out his own mock draft, as everybody in the world does at this point. And
I would like to say that mock drafts before free agency are foolishness. I just want that on the record, but continue.
Fair enough, which is why if we wind up doing one at all Dolphins, it will be done much closer to the draft, and we're not going to do one. Although we will recap what everybody's saying around the country just for informational and entertainment purposes. But Joel Klatt, who watches a lot of college football, Fox Sports analyst, came up with the Dolphins picking at number 21, quarterback Michael Penix Jr. from the University of Washington, by way of Indiana, where he played a few years before moving on to the West Coast. And then, interestingly enough, while that raised a lot of eyebrows, the Draft Network also has put out a mock draft on this Monday morning, and they also had Michael Penix Jr.
Woo!
to the Dolphins at number 21.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Omar, your initial reaction to that would be?
Woo! No, I like Michael Penix Jr. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of upside. Reminds me a lot of Tua Tagovailoa. I could see the correlation. However, if I'm going to be drafting a quarterback, I'm going to be drafting somebody who brings different skill sets to the table than Tua. Just my personal opinion. It's easy to mock these quarterbacks, to teams that allegedly have need. And I'm of the belief that you continue to draft a quarterback until you absolutely know you have an elite one. And even then, I still say it's kind of a good idea to draft a quarterback. When the Baltimore Ravens had Joe Flacco in his prime, they drafted a quarterback named Lamar Jackson. Turned out pretty good for them. When Carson Wentz was in his prime with Eagles, they drafted a quarterback, Jalen Hurts. Yeah, he was still in his prime.
Was he still in his prime?
He didn't really start.
He'd gotten hurt. Yeah, and I may give you Flacco, even though he was a mature veteran, but Wentz's time had kind of like a little bit like this.
Yeah, but it was still pretty decent quarterback. And they drafted Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts took over the franchise, took them to a Super Bowl. I am not opposed. One of my favorite drafts was the year 2012, the year that they had an organization that Mike McDaniel was part of, where they drafted Russell Wilson, Robert Griffin III, and then later in that draft, in the fourth round, they drafted Kirk Cousins. There's no shame in drafting and developing two quarterbacks at the same time and seeing how it pans out. I have never been opposed to a quarterback having to compete, and a young quarterback needing to be groomed and, taught and developed. If we look at the roster right now, an easy way to create $4 million in cap space is to release Mike White. But you only do that if you have a young developmental quarterback that you believe has some upside and has some future. Now, what were you going to say?
Who's your backup then? Skyler?
See, I wouldn't do it now. I'd do it later, depending on, because you don't know who you're going to go into the draft. I can make the argument that they have a ton of other needs
Sure.
on the roster, a ton of other things that they need to address. Hell, they got one safety on the roster. They got one defensive tackle on the roster. They've got two inside linebackers on the roster. Offensive line needs to be patched up. You could definitely benefit from another slot receiver.
Omar, by the way, gang, so you'll know Omar's playing hurt. Omar is like soldiering through, so we'll cut him some slack on the coffee. Go for it.
So yes, you've got other needs, but ultimately, if you don't have a quarterback, you're basically just doggy paddling in the water. You're going nowhere. And I'm not of the opinion that the Dolphins don't have a quarterback, but I do understand the ramifications of when your quarterback becomes expensive and price begins to escalate. And I also know that this quarterback has had injury issues throughout the course of his career. So I'm not opposed to drafting a quarterback. I really don't. It doesn't have to be the first pick. It doesn't have to be the second pick. It could just be, hell, Brock Purdy was the last player drafted in the draft class, and Skylar Thompson was drafted ahead of him. Continue to pick quarterbacks until you absolutely have that guy. So I'm in support of it. Not necessarily Penix at 21, but I am in support of it. And I honestly don't think Michael Penix is going to be drafted in the first round. Just my personal opinion.
Okay, well, here are my thoughts quickly. And I wrote about this on alldolphins.com on Friday or Saturday, I want to say. And this is, Omar, do you have the ability to do your thing here or no? On alldolphins.com, I wrote about that particular situation. Basically, on the one hand, explaining to you why, to me, it makes perfect sense. On the other hand, why it's, to me, I don't think it's going to happen, and why it's an extremely long shot. On the one hand, yeah, he's got a lot of tool qualities, and he's got a stronger arm. Yes, the Arm Queen said that Penix has a stronger arm than Tua Tagovailoa, and I don't even think it's close.
Really?
Yeah, and you're looking at a guy who was like ultra productive. He was a runner-up for the Heisman his last season, and he made some throws even in that playoff game that they lost.
He's not nearly as polished as Tua is as a passer, but continue. Yeah,
I think he's I think he's there. And the drawbacks with him, because here's the thing is, and then the Joel Klatt rationale was like, I'm not giving a second contract to a guy with Tua's injury history, focusing on the concussion, because he said himself he had about 10 and it doesn't get any better. And they come a lot easier. It doesn't take as much of a hit to get another one. They get more severe and more severe. Okay.
Are we still bringing up the concussion? Hold on. Wait. Time out.
Joel Klatt said he had 10 concussions.
Okay. That's cool for Joel Klatt. Are we still bringing up the concussions with Tua?
Cool. I'm not bringing it up. He's the one who brought it up.
Okay.
And this is where I'm going to make the point. Hold on. Let me finish my pros and cons here. The thing with Penix is you're looking at a guy who tore an ACL in the same knee back-to-back years at Indiana, and then they had like 2 shoulder separations, one on each in 2 different other seasons. So if injury concerns is why you're not giving Tua a contract, then drafting Michael Penix doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
And definitely not in the first round. You don't draft those damaged goods in the first round. Even
from that standpoint, here's the thing though. If you hit on a quarterback, even if you bring in him as competition for Tua plays him in camp in a legitimate camp. By the way, and this is another thing, Dolphins don't do that, which is another reason why it's not happening. But yes, we're playing the hypothetical game here.
We are absolutely, the Dolphins do not do that. They do not believe in quarterbacks competing at all. It will not happen. Like, forget about it. It's not going to happen.
But this is why from that standpoint, it would make sense that you draft him, competition. Let's say Tua plays him, Tua balls out, Tua gets his big contract. Michael Penix, if you hit on the guy, still will have value. Remember Jimmy Garoppolo in New England? Never played for them. They got a second-round pick in a trade for him because quarterback, if you got a good one, is a massive asset.
Yes.
That's the thing.
If you have a good one, but they're not going to do that.
No. Correct. And that was kind of the conclusion.
Didn't say that they shouldn't do that.
Correct.
But they're not going to do that.
Correct, because that's not who they are. They
never got Ryan Tannehill competition. The last quarterback that they got competition was Chad Henne, and they drafted Pat White. Obviously, you can figure out how that played out for them.
Well, but it wasn't even for competition. It was almost like they wanted to add like a tweak, a wrinkle to the offense, being able to run the Wildcat with a quarterback as opposed to with Ronnie Brown. We all saw how that played out. To me, one last word on the quarterback position, because you and I have talked about Tua ad nauseum, but the bottom line on Tua comes down to what's the belief of the organization. If the belief is that he's improved every year and he's going to continue to improve, then go ahead, sign him. And where I sit is, as you well know, I believe I have my doubts. So no, I don't extend them and lock them up for a few years, and certainly not because you need the cap space. Yes. Because the quarterback is the most important position that you have to hit. You don't extend the guy purely because you're in a bad cap spot and you have to create cap space.
I can dance around that a little bit, but I understand where your thought process is. Problem is, that's the easiest route, depending on whether or not he's agreeing to your terms, which is basically to pay him 75 cents on the dollar, which he probably won't. Now, I don't think that factors into what you do at the quarterback position, whether it's Michael Penix Jr. or whether it's you trade for a guy, or whether it's you wait for a later pick in a Bo Nix, or if a Jaden Daniels falls to 21, and I like Jaden Daniels.
He's not. He falls out of the top 10. It's going to be a shocker. So,
I mean, Lamar Jackson fall out of the top 10, so. It happens.
Yeah, but no, kind of different situation. Go ahead.
I'm of the opinion that you draft a quarterback if you feel like that's the highest value player on your board. If it's not the highest value player on your board, you wait until third day to add somebody to your team, and I'm fine with that. I don't need it to be a high draft pick. We know that they're obsessed with Tua. We know that they love Tua. We know that they're ready to propose to Tua. Whether you agree with it or not, that's not a factor in this equation. Only thing is, I don't like the fact that people are bringing up concussions at this point. He's played a whole entire season without a concussion. Like, I don't hear anybody bringing up concussions for other quarterbacks who've suffered concussions. But we get it. This is Tua. He's going to be scrutinized, criticized more than just about any quarterback in the NFL right now. It's not true?
Yeah, he's going to be criticized, scrutinized like any quarterback who was picked in the top 5, top 10. I mean, come on.
I don't think they get scrutinized like that.
No.
Kenny Pickett, I don't hear much scrutiny over him in Pittsburgh.
Because nobody. Well, and that's a compliment to Tua, because nobody thinks Kenny Pickett's all that good. That's why he's not scrutinized the same way. That's the thing with Tua is he's good enough to merit attention, not great enough right now to escape any and all criticism, no matter what Tuanon says. Where's the lie? There's
no lie. I mean, there is no lie. You deliver in the fourth quarter in clutch moments, you'd escape criticism. So. Yep. You're right. Let's get into some of these important NFL dates.
Yes.
Shall
I?
Yes, you shall.
Tomorrow's the first big one, and that's the first day that NFL teams can apply the franchise tag. Christian Wilkins, if they're going to wind up doing it. There's some school of thought the Dolphins will not be doing that because it ties up 19.7 million. Although the number is actually not out just yet, but it's going to be around that neighborhood. For a team that's already over 50 million over the cap that they need to get to on March 13th.
Yeah, I think it begins the process. One, you never put the franchise tag out there as a threat immediately, just because from that standpoint, you've already set the price point. Like, okay, if I'm putting a franchise tag on you, then I've already set the price point at 19.7. Then I'm expecting to be paid 19.7 for the entire duration of my career. Or at least that's the baseline in terms of guaranteed money. So I think that they're going to take it all the way up to the March 5th deadline to figure out whether or not they can get a deal done, a multi-year deal done with Christian Wilkins. And if they can't, then I believe that they're going to use the franchise tag. Have you ever dealt with Christian Wilkins? He's kind of
No. Who is he? Is he that number 94? I think. Yes. No, I've
yeah.
never had any interaction with Christian.
He's kind of a strong-willed individual.
Yep.
And I think Christian Wilkins is very clear on the fact that, hey, I mean, when you turn down their offer and you say, okay, I'm going to play on my 5th-year option and then buy yourself a injury protection insurance plan to cover yourself, you're all in. And I think Christian would be wise for him to take it all the way to the market unless the Dolphins give him exactly what he wants. Now, who's to say that's, we don't know how this is going to play out, but I personally believe that Christian is going to get the franchise tag. And I personally believe that they're going to have to clear 70, if not 80, if not $90 million in cap space, primarily because you're going to use the franchise tag on Christian just to buy yourself some time. Now, if they can get a multi-year deal done, great. Congratulations to them. That would be a step in the right direction in terms of how to heal this apocalypse that you've got going on. But I don't think Christian's going to be an easy person to negotiate with.
And see, to me, I don't think it's a slam dunk. I truly don't. I think it's 50-50, actually, that they will apply the franchise tag. And I think
that they let Christian hit the market.
I think there's a possibility, and we've had this discussion before. And by the way, just the deadline, as Omar mentioned, is March 5th, the last day to apply the tag. And then March 13th is the start of the new league year. Before that, 2 days before that, is the start of the negotiation period, or legal tampering, if you want to call it. I think it may
the combine dates, because that's the actual illegal tampering that'll take place.
Yes, the combine is next week. I shall be in Indianapolis, as I am every February, early March. Combine goes from technically next Monday, 26th, through Sunday, March 3rd. Like the prospect interviews end on Saturday, March 2nd, which is when I make my return to good old South Florida. To me, it may come down again to a pure mathematical situation for the Dolphins, where as much as they hate seeing Christian leave, losing Christian allows them to retain more of their free agents that they want to keep than if they sign Christian to a long-term deal. And certainly if they tag him and they can't work out a deal.
He's a foundational piece. He's the first building block of your rebuild. Tone setter, leader. You don't let that walk out your building. You don't.
Except, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Actually, it was a viewer or a Twitter follower who pointed that out, and not completely wrong, is how noticeable was in those games, because we talk about Tua not showing up against major opponents.
Wasn't it Josh Allen that he forced the fumble?
Correct. No, that it was a huge play in that game. Outside of that,
he's a defensive tackle.
Correct. That precisely my point. How much you pay for a defensive tackle whose impact on the game can only be so much, unless you're Aaron Donald or Chris Jones, if we're going to be honest about it. And that, again, if I'm telling you, if it's not as simple as this, but if it's Christian Wilkins, or you can bring back Robert Hunt, Connor Williams, and Andrew Van Ginkel, I'm kind of leaning this way here personally. It's not, and that's part of the major decisions the Dolphins have to make. Yes, there are ways the Dolphins can clear up a lot of cap space. They're going to restructure guys. They're going to cut Emmanuel Ogbah. They're going to cut Xavier Howard probably post June 1st. They can't use that money until then. Jerome Baker's contract certainly will be revisited. You mentioned maybe cutting Mike White. If they do that, however, that means they have to be comfortable with Skylar Thompson as their number 2. They can save, I mentioned, like $3.54 million against the cap. Keon Crossan, despite all the major injury setbacks he had last season. You can save $3 million by cutting him as well. Jeff Wilson Jr. maybe.
This is there are a number of guys that pretty much were going to be shaken down, chopping block. A number of players who are going to have their contract restructured, and I think the journey begins kind of now. They've talked about this. They've got their ideas. They've got their plans. Clearly, they're going to go into combine and sit down with Athletes First, which is the agency that has a bulk of their free agents, including Christian Wilkins, and figure out what's in play for them. So it'll be interesting to see, but this is going to be a completely remade roster, and it's not going to be easy to do it.
Then they're talking to Drew also. They're going to talk to Drew about a Tyreek restructure. They're going to talk to Drew about Jerome revisiting his contract. They're going to
Connor Williams.
Yep, I don't know what they're going to say to Drew about Emmanuel Ogba, other than sorry, Drew, but
Andrew. Come on, Drew knows Emmanuel Ogba.
I'm actually semi-surprised it hasn't happened already, because nobody's trading for his contract. So I don't know that you can get anything for him at this point. So we were mentioning the important dates. So that would be the next one. The start of the offseason program is going to be in mid-April. It's the first Monday in April. If you have a new head coach, Dolphins obviously don't, then it becomes 2 weeks after that, which I know last year was April 17th. This year, I have to look at my trusty calendar over here as I put on my reading glasses, because my eyes are not what they once were. So this year, the start of the offseason program would be April 15th, April 15th, I would believe. And then the draft. Sorry?
Right around the corner.
Yeah, it's coming up, actually. And then the draft on that last Thursday in April, following a rookie mini camp, which can be the weekend after the draft or 2 weekends after the draft under Mike McDaniel. The first 2 years the Dolphins went the second week. And then you have the start of OTAs in May, organized team activities in the 10 weeks of the offseason program. And then early in May, sometime in May, that's when the schedule will be released. We already know all the opponents for 2024. And let me run them down here real quickly, we were an informational show, so let's do it. Obviously, all the 3 AFC East opponents, home and away. The home games are against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Tennessee Titans, I should have that down, shouldn't I? They're on the road against Houston. They're on the road against Tennessee. They're at Cleveland. They get the Las Vegas Raiders at home. The quote unquote 17th game, they are going to be at the Green Bay Packers. And then they play the NFC West. They will have Arizona at home and the San Francisco 49ers at home. They're going to be at Seattle, and they're going to play at the LA Rams.
At Seattle, I like that trip.
Yeah. One wonders if the Dolphins are going to stay out on the West Coast for the Seattle and LA Rams trips. If they're going to ask, first of all, number one, if they're going to ask the NFL to put those two back to back, and then if they acquiesce, obviously that would be the purpose of staying out on the West Coast. So, but those schedules and dates, again, not coming up until May, usually is when it comes out.
Mm-hmm. So that's where we are, and whether or not they'll draft a quarterback, it's not going to happen, but it'll be interesting.
Probably not.
Very likely not.
It's not what they do. Why should they draft a quarterback? They took one just 2 years ago. Skylar Thompson, already forget.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And then they added a quarterback to serve as his backup. Yes. To serve
as Tua's backup. Yeah, correct.
Serves to his backup. So it'll be interesting to see how this offseason translates into a better product. However, we will be here, alldolphins.com. We've got special things planned for you. We've got another former player coming this week. We've got another podcast Unites coming this week. So stay tuned. You know how to find all our work, alldolphins.com, for free. No paywall, no subscriptions. And you know how to find all of our information and the podcast, just look for All Dolphins and you should find us. All right. On that note, we are out. Oh, you want to give you that?
There you go.